Hi there, students. To render, or as a noun, a render or rendition. Okay, this word has a multiplicity of meanings. The origin is from Latin, from redare, to give again. And give is part of the basis of many of these meanings. So, to render, to present, to submit, to give something in for approval, for payment, for consideration, to be marked. So he rendered a bill for the work done. He rendered his tax return. I rendered my homework to the teacher. Notice this use of the word render is really very formal. And I think I would use the phrasal verb give in. Okay? To hand in, to give in. Okay? So he rendered his project for approval. He gave it in. He presented it. Okay, to render, to give, to provide, to make available. For example, assistance, support, a service. So he rendered assistance to the person whose car had broken down beside the road. Okay, he rendered help. The builder rendered services to the company. Okay, make available, to provide. Then we can also use to render, meaning to surrender. Notice it's the same root. To give up, to yield. So the enemy would not render, and they fought to the last man. Here the noun is the rendition. The rendition of the enemy came the next day. So the enemy surrendered. So to surrender due to force, due to pressure, the boy rendered his mobile phone to the teacher, gave up. Then we have another meaning, to cause, to become, to make. So the bad news rendered him speechless. The bolt of lightning rendered my modem inoperative. So to make something into something else, to make it change. Yeah? You can use render in cooking, I suppose, to render meat or to render bones, to boil down into fat, to separate the fat from the other bits. So, for example, they take the carcass, the bones of an animal, and they boil it, and eventually on the top there is a layer of fat, and that they take off, and that is to render. So it's to make it into a usable form. Okay, we can use render in the arts. So to render, to represent, to depict in words or pictures. He rendered a portrait of the king. He made a rendition of the king. He painted a picture of him. Or to render music. Most commonly we use the noun in this. His rendition of Beethoven's symphony was absolutely excellent. So to perform arts, yeah, You can use he rendered a speech to the group of people. He rendered a description of my uncle. Okay, so to make something that represents something else, or a piece of music, to play a piece of music. You can also use render to mean to translate into another language. So he rendered the document into Urdu. Okay, he translated it. Maybe you know the use of this type of meaning in IT, meaning to convert a file into video form. Okay, so to make the data into a video that you can actually see, to render. Okay, to render the data. And one final one as well. When you have a wall of bricks, maybe you cover it with something. You could render it with cement, or you could render it with plaster. A cement render, a plaster render, it's a covering over a surface of bricks to make it stronger and make it last longer. So the builder rendered the walls with cement before continuing to build further, to cover in cement as a surface. So notice all of these are formal meanings. I think probably the least formal is to cover the wall, but I think that's more a technical term for building. Okay, I wouldn't normally use render in an informal conversation. You need to find a different word. This is a formal word, and I wouldn't use it informally at all. I think it's probably maybe 7.5 in formality, so it's well up in the formality scale. Okay, so also it's a regular verb, rendered, and remember the nouns are either a rendition or a render. So a render on a wall, a rendition of a piece of music, a rendition painting a portrait, to give up, to surrender, the rendition of the enemy, to render a bill, the rendition of this bill. But all of these very, very formal. So let me go through again. To render, to present or submit or give in for payment or approval. To provide or give or make available. So to render supplies, to render assistance, to render a service. Then to surrender, to yield, to give up. The enemy would not render. And then to cause, to become, to make something happen. So the lightning rendered the modem useless. The news rendered him speechless, made him speechless. Then to depict, to draw, to represent in words or pictures. He rendered a beautiful landscape, copying what he could see. His rendition of the music was beautiful. Could you render that piece again? Could you play that piece again? To translate or to convert, to translate into another language, or to render the data into a video file. To extract the fat from meat and bones. You need to render this to get the wax out of it, and then to cover a wall in cement, plaster, adobe, in something to make it stronger and make it last longer. So remember, all of these uses are formal, or technical in the building sense. And to render is a regular verb. It makes me think of a quotation from the Bible, not that I'm religious. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. So give the money to Caesar, to the bank, and give praise or prayers to God. Give again, okay? To give what is due, to give what is appropriate. So there you go. I hope I've rendered a good performance and a good explanation of the meaning of this word to render. If you enjoyed the video, give it a rating, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now. Render. Rendition.